everything we do is about mentoring people to realize their strengths, lean into their self-worth, thrive going forward, positive reinforcement, and then help people as they struggle, because people will struggle, but we have to sort of be there with them. I want to create more businesses or acquire more businesses. So I want more businesses so we can create more jobs and so that more folks can have a chance to make a market-based wage and provide for their families. That's how you kind of really have diversity in the workplace. It's like take your frontline workers, you groom a few up to be your frontline supervisors, you groom a few more up to be managers, you groom them up along the way. And they will hold the culture strong of what that social enterprise is about. Like about 4 or 5 years ago, I finally figured out something. Now I'm older in life, but my mantra every day is getting up and seeking joy. So it's about helping the individual, working on it today, and leading in with investment. Poor in our society need help. Poverty rate in America has been the same for 45 years, same narrow 12% band. Once you understand God loves you no matter what, and that you're made in God's eyes, everything else gets much easier.
Hey family, this is the Thrive Word Journey. Look, life's too short to just get by, and 2025 is the year to persist. We're here to grow, build, and thrive. This podcast is all about powerful stories, real talk, and practical steps to help you level up in every area of your life. Now, if that sounds like something you need, don't just watch, be a part of the journey. Let us know you're here. Do us a favor. If you're listening on the podcast platform, download the episode. And if you're watching on YouTube, you know what to do. Hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on those notifications so you never miss an episode. And as we always say, let's make thriving our new norm.
Yeah. Beat up, bullied, and dunked on. Beat up, bullied, and dunked on. Bullied and dunked on. Yeah. Let's get it.
Today, we're thrilled to have Tom Vozzo, the visionary leader behind Homeboy Industries, with us today. From corporate executive to the driving force of social change, Tom is here to share how radical leadership, compassionate business practices, and second chances can transform lives and business. So, let's just dive into it. And Tom, how are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful, Michael. I was off on a vacation for a couple of days. I'm refreshed and
Nice.
ready to go.
Nice. I need one of those. I was just talking to my producer and was like, we need a vacation because working on social media and doing this kind of stuff in addition with business, it takes a lot.
Stuff. Yep.
Yeah. Vacation is a must. So I lived in Los Angeles from 2003 to 2016. In that time, I actually started a nonprofit myself called I Love You Dad Foundation. It didn't last because I had to move and then I couldn't find anybody to keep it going. But I remember one time, I didn't know what it was, but I was driving down, I don't remember what street it was, but it was like Homeboy, Homeboy. And it said it right on the building. I was like, that's cool. And then a friend of mine told me it was a nonprofit organization. And you are the leader of that organization. Can you talk about it a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So Homeboy Industries, as you mentioned, we're based in Los Angeles. We're a nonprofit. And really our mission is to help gang members leave gang life behind, leave life of crime behind, and move their life forward in a very positive way. Started over 38 years ago. Our founder, Father Greg Boyle, a Jesuit priest. First stop as a parish priest was in East Los Angeles, epicenter of gang violence in the 90s. He wanted to sort of change that dynamic and get these young men out of gangs or really stop dying from the gang activity. And he hit upon this simple notion that if you can get them a job so they can make enough money for the basics of food and shelter, they're going to stop running with the gangs to make that money for the basics of food and shelter. And that's how we started. And from there, we moved into social enterprises. But really, over the last 20 years, it's about helping people heal from their complex trauma. And so essentially, when someone leaves the prison system or jail system and they don't want to go back to that gang life, they walk through our doors and we help them. And we help them move their life forward and with all sorts of programs and services, but we have social enterprise and we can talk more about that. But essentially, we're a gang rehabilitation program. 10,000 people come through our doors every year. We're the largest gang intervention program in the state, which means we're the largest one in the country, which means we're the largest one in the world.
Yeah.
Because still LA has the most gang members than anywhere else.
Yeah. Well, LA was known for gangs. Well, two major gangs.
Yeah.
And did you find that some of those gang members from, the two main ones came through the organization and
Sure.
transformed their lives?
Yeah, no. So in fact, look, listen, there are over 200 different gangs in Los Angeles. Not
Yeah.
clearly the famous ones, but three famous MS-13, all that stuff, right? But look, there's all the gangs get really a micro level of that many gang members. We pull from people all over the county. We're downtown Los Angeles, sort of gang neutral territory. And so the most important part of getting somebody out of gang life is getting them out of their neighborhood where their fellow homies are around, trying to pull them back into that side. And so people come to our place voluntarily. They're not court ordered. They want to change their life. They want to be employed. They want to have an honest day's wage, and they want to heal. And they don't want their kids to be gang members. So they voluntarily come, and we help them. And we help them in all sorts of ways. And it's been a very successful program. And me as the leader, I sort of brag on behalf of the team. We know how to help get men and women out of gang life and leave that behind. It's a wonderful team and a wonderful environment. And I say, anybody listening to this, please come visit us at Homeboy Industries.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I never got a chance to go to the location, even though I wanted to. I thought it was just, when I read up on it, it was like back then, I think it was like 2007, 8, something like that. And I was like, man, this is amazing, you know? And when I started, I Love You That, I was like, I would love to have an organization that is as big and as cool and as making such a social impact as Homeboy Industries was. And so, but that wasn't your start for you. It was a transition, and you were in corporate America, which is, I'm sure, was probably lucrative for you. And you transferred into the nonprofit world. Why did you do that?
Yeah, so right, a little bit about my background. Corporate America for 26 years. My last 8 years in corporate America, I ran a $2 billion set of businesses over those 8 years. Very profitable businesses. We were part of a $13 billion corporation. You know, we were a public company, private company, public company. So I got to be there for a few of those transactions, and
Nice.
it did well for myself and my family. And I love business. And even when I do Homeboy talks, all the time I talk about Homeboy, I lead off by saying I'm a committed capitalist. And I still believe well-run companies are good for society. Sometimes it doesn't go over so well to certain audiences to say I'm a committed capitalist. But again, well-run companies are good for our society. They provide jobs. They provide good jobs for people. They can move their life forward, right?
I agree.
And so, but there's even why I had a very successful corporate career and rose up the corporate ladder, right? There was something a little bit out of balance, like shareholder value came before customer. When push came to shove, customers and employees became secondary. And it kind of bothered me. Somewhere in me, I was yearning to find, is there a way of running businesses where employees are as important as delivering profits and shareholder value? Because I've seen businesses where you can kind of do both, but somehow top management ownership thinks about it differently. So that was what was behind some of my thinking. But listen, all during my corporate life, we were encouraged to, while our business was national and international, was to be local. And so I was on the board of Salvation Army of Los Angeles. And when my fellow board member friend was on that board, on the Homeboy board, invited me, he knew I left corporate America, retired, and invited me to the Homegirl Cafe for lunch. Now, part of Homeboy is we have social enterprise businesses. So we employ our folks every day, and they provide purposeful activity. Mm-hmm. And so I go into the Homegirl Cafe and have lunch with my friend. And I still remember this is now 13 years ago. I still remember this like it was yesterday. I'm having lunch, we're talking, and I'm looking around at the employees, and I'm seeing how they're attentive to the customer. They're taking direction from their supervisor. They're enjoying their own interactions. You know, back to my for-profit life, like in my last 8 years, I bought 40 companies and sold 5, right? So you get a feeling for what companies are going to be good combination, shared values, and good workforces. And just sitting there eating lunch, I'm seeing this is a good workforce they have here. And I'm also realizing in my for-profit world, I would have not hired not one of those folks because they had tattoos on their face. Mm-hmm. They were felons, and they were gang members. And so it kind of challenged me right then and there that, here's this hotshot business guy I think I am. And that there's a part of society I knew nothing about, and a part of the workforce I knew nothing about. And that at Homeboy, in the context of a job, we're helping people dramatically move their life forward. And so my friend asked me to get involved. He wanted me to be a board member and that type of thing. But I had done enough board director work. And something in me wanted to know if my business skills could be used in a different way. And so I started volunteering at Homeboy. They have social enterprise businesses. At the time, they were going through a financial crunch. They needed a guy with some gray hair and some experience.
Some experience, yeah.
And so I volunteered, and, just like you fall in love with the place. It's good energy. People care, and people want to move their life forward. And it's great to be part of that community. And listen, I thought I would do it for 6 months to a year and help them out and move on and, go off and do something else. But just beautiful environment. And here I am 12 and a half years later, still loving Homeboy and loving being part of that community.
Yeah. What was the thing that made you stick around? I mean, I know that you said the environment. Was there just a moment that said, you know what, I think I want to get more involved into what Homeboy is about?
Yeah. So listen, all our folks, and this is like I came to Homeboy like a typical corporate America guy, typical middle class guy, typical all that stuff, right? Not really knowing what the struggles of the poor in our society are, not
Mm-hmm.
really knowing anything about gang life, not knowing anything about being incarcerated. Right. So I had all those sort of stereotypes in mind. But you come to learn now, Homeboy, that like all our folks are victims of complex trauma. They got jumped into a gang when they were young. They're second, third generation gang members. Their parents jumped, their mother jumped them into the gang, their father, their uncle, their cousin. They've been abused as young people. They join a gang thinking that's going to be their family because their family's not really protecting them anyway. False hope. They do something bad. They go to prison. They come out. They're damaged. They need healing. They need help. And what's sort of magical about Homeboy is we have a team of people who help people through their trauma and help people form positive relationships for the first time. You walk into Homeboy, you go through our doors, you hear laughter, you see cries. People are authentic. They don't have to have that hard exterior that a gang member has when they're out in the streets. They can kind of just be themselves. And along the way, even like a guy like me from corporate America can actually help them, obviously through helping running the organization and getting us resources and doing all those things. But just like Father Greg, our founder, would say, just being willing to move each of us to go to the folks who are on the margins of society and be in relationship with them. Not
Mm-hmm.
wag our finger, tell them what to do, just be in relationship with them.
Mm-hmm.
Help them heal, helps them move forward. And so people are with us for 18 months at a time. So you can see their growth, you can see their transformation. And just being part of that is very endearing and heartwarming and helpful. And it's, a little bit of God's graces are just so visible.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the sort of emotional part. And then me being the competitive business guy part is seeing that the people who are poor in our society have no resources or so many challenges. And so part of my thing was, hey, can I help this organization grow, bring more resources, and help solve problems in a tangible way, in addition to our team helping solve problems in the emotional way? And so it was a very interesting job. I mean, it was very strategically very difficult. The hardest job I ever had. Emotionally, it was amongst the hardest job I ever had. But fulfillment-wise, it was the best job I've ever had, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sitting here and I'm moved by the fact that you saw the possibility and the promise, not necessarily the building, but the people who made it what it was and what it is.
What it is, yeah.
And you use your skills as a corporate guy, bring it to the nonprofit world. And we're going to talk about social enterprises. What is a social enterprise? What's the definition of a social enterprise?
Yeah. So what we do is we run businesses. We have a bakery, we have a cafe, we have a social community operation. Now we'll get to this in a minute, but we have about 10 social enterprises. But the way Homeboy, why we call our businesses social enterprises is because we don't run our businesses to make money. We run our business to provide jobs. So we don't bake bread to hire homies. We hire homies to bake bread.
Mm.
So our business model is not about bread. Our business model is about employment and getting people, for our folks, the first job they've ever had, structure in life, teach them job skills. And so our social enterprises that's the purpose. Now, when I first came in, it was sort of, they were losing a lot of money. It was a really struggle. And I try to get our business managers to understand, got to wear two hats. You got to wear the mission hat. You got to wear the social enterprise leader hat. And so I said, listen, we have to run this like a for-profit business. Good product quality, good cost of goods, control shrinkage, good customer service. But the one line I'm not going to hold the business manager accountable for is the labor line. And for us, we have 2 to 3 times as much labor as a comparable for-profit business. But our model is about having more employment to have more purposeful activities so people can heal. Mm-hmm. Thankfully, we have donors who help us offset those losses in the business, the labor line. So definition of social enterprise is a business that's run for some type of social good. For us, it's buying employment for the people who've never been employed before. Other business may be the green economy, maybe environmental issues. And so you have to be really clear, what is your part of your mission of your social enterprises? And again, back to why we have a bakery and a cafe. There's nothing better. How do you get gang members to not have rivalries any longer?
Food.
If you can personalize, like you don't demonize somebody you're in relationship with. And so there's nothing better than walking into our bakery, going to our bread table and seeing 2 guys, rival gangs, standing shoulder to shoulder, rolling dough, making bread, because they know how much bread they got to make that day.
Mm-hmm.
They got to get along and they got to get it done. And that breaks down barriers and they start forming relationships. So they start seeing each other as people, not as this member of this gang, member of that gang. And that's why we have our social enterprises, is to provide that structure.
First of all, I find that just crazy amazing when, never been in a gang, but you see the world of what
Yeah, sure.
gangs and like they might not have an issue with each other, but it's because they're in that gang set.
That's right. They're told to have an issue with the gang, right?
Right, exactly. And so to be able to experience that and witness that and actually create that and cultivate that culture is pretty phenomenal. It's crazy. It's really great.
And it works. That's the amazing thing. We all grow up wanting to know that there's goodness in everybody, and you see that every day at Homeboy Industries. There's goodness in everybody, and we're helping people develop positive relations for the first time in their life with the other. That's
Yeah.
important.
And so the social enterprise is mission-driven business. What advice would you give to entrepreneurs that want to do that for their business?
Yeah, do it. First of all, yes, have a business that has a mission. Now, listen, again, I say this as a committed capitalist. It's okay to make money. It's okay to have a business that makes money. Honestly, obviously stay within the rules, but like if it's, if you have a product or service someone wants to pay you money for, right? You're not forcing them to buy from you. So do it, make money, but also take care of your employees. And it sounds almost so obvious. I hate having to say this, but I think over the last couple of years it's shifted. Well-run businesses are good have good employees who stay there for a long time.
Yeah.
Right? So if you can have a business that you have not just competitive wages, but good wages, market-based wages, and people can make their life dreams come true too, perfect. If you're in a business, let me take this another way. If you're in a business, so much of our capital markets are private equity-owned businesses, privately owned businesses, you have to get the highest profit level out there, or else you're considered not a good business person.
Right.
But listen, I know it. As opposed to making 12% profit, make 10. And have the 2% for the employees. That 10% is still a lot of money for you as the owner, right? Think about how you can grow a business and have people grow along with you. And that's where the fun and the affirmation and the motivation takes place. And that's what, if you're an entrepreneur, come up with a great idea, but bring people along. Look, running business is not easy. I'm not saying it's an easy scenario. How we work with people, everybody can afford to do that.
Yeah, that seems like it would need to be like a mindset shift of, who you're being as an entrepreneur or someone who believes in capitalism. But how does a business owner integrate the social responsibility into, a business model of not necessarily sacrificing possibility, that 2%, but, being okay with taking less of a profit to build to build that kind of social enterprise?
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to your values, and it comes down to what you want to accomplish in your life and do. Again, make money. Go make money. I'm okay with that. Yeah, I'm just saying, bring people along, right? And if I can tell you a story about a couple of our homie stories, right?
Please do.
And this will I'll get to the point of your question. Back to our bakery, our Homeboy Bakery. We have bread routes, so we deliver bread to bakeries, to restaurants around the city. We also have farmers markets, right? And so we send our guys out to the farmers market, and they go out with the bread. It's a sort of a great experience where they're talking to people they then were to talk to. They're selling their bread, they're taking the cash, bringing it back in, right? All homies doing this. No outside management watching, and they just do it on their own. One of our best farmers market guys, George. This is early in my time at Homeboy. I was walking through the bakery, management by walking around, and overheard George talking to the bakery manager asking for the weekend off, which is a big ask, particularly farmers markets. That's where all the volume is.
Yeah.
So manager gave him the weekend off, and then I went up to George afterwards and chit-chatting, making small talk. Right? I said, "Hey, George, what are you doing?" Very light thing. And he said, "I'm reporting in." And I say, "Well, what's that mean?" He said, "I'm reporting to county jail." I said, "Why?"
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "Well, I owe money." And at that time in LA County, you can report into county jail and retire some of the debt. Now,
Okay.
a little bit of an aside. It's another nutty thing for our society. People do a crime, they go to prison, right? They have restitution costs. Okay. But then that debt piles up while they're in prison.
While you're in prison.
They pay parole costs, probation costs, court costs. How does society think that someone, as they're accumulating debt while they're in prison, they can come out and start paying off that debt right away when they barely can make enough money or can't even get a job to make enough money for food and shelter? So it's just nutty. But at that time in LA County, you could go to report into county jail and earn off money.
Mm-hmm.
So I drove home that night thinking, that's pretty amazing that George chose to do it the right way. Well, society wants him to do it the right way. He didn't go to a loan shark. He didn't go to his homeboys, ask for the money. He didn't go sell drugs to make the money to pay off his debt. He did it. He wanted to do it in an honest way. right? And so he was reporting in. And all weekend long, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, maybe I should just pull money out of my pocket, help them out. And it was sort of, that was rolling in my brain. Tuesday morning, I make a beeline to go see George. I said, George, what happened? And I could see the stress on his face. Well, interesting. He was an unusual case where after he got out of prison, within months, he was able to get custody of his two children, 10-year-old and 8. And the caregiver who was supposed to watch his children while he reported to the county jail, last minute called in, couldn't make it. He had no family support. He didn't have his neighborhood support. So he reported to county jail and left his 10-year-old and 8-year-old alone in their apartment for 3 days.
What's up, Thrival Journey listeners and watchers? Look, if you're someone with big dreams of entrepreneurship but need a flexible way to earn income while building your business, let me tell you about the Orions Group. Through our partnership with Arise Virtual Solutions, you can become a customer support professional, aka CSP, and start earning from home on your own terms. Arise offers a streamlined certification process, getting you trained and ready to work with well-known brands all across America. You can set your own hours, choose the clients you want to work with, and create a work-life balance that fits your entrepreneurial goals. The best part, you don't have to choose between your side gig and your business dreams. Being a CSP with the Orions Group means you can bring in extra income while have the flexibility to focus on growing your own venture, much like I did. Whether you're looking to supplement your income or need a bridge while building your empire, this is the opportunity for you. You interested? If so, head over to www.theorionsgroup.com to learn more about becoming a CSP with the Orions Group. Look here. Support your entrepreneurial journey while supporting the Thrival Journey podcast at the same time. All right, one more time, www.theorionsgroup.com. All right, we're done with the spot. Let's get back to the podcast.
So imagine this as a parent leaving your child alone in their apartment. You're incarcerated. You can't get out. You can't make the phone call. You can't check on, and the stress that brings. Let me just quickly say, the kid turned out okay. It was fine. But the stress of a parent.
Right.
Now, why do I tell that story? For two things. Those of us in the rest of society, we judge. We quickly judge. Wow, he shouldn't have done. He should have figured another way to pay the money. He shouldn't have sort of put his children at risk. But I'm saying people we serve, people who are poor in our society, have impossible choices to make every day. And the rest of us shouldn't judge them for the choices they make. We just need to lean in and help. So how does this relate to your question? So if you're a social enterprise, if you're an entrepreneur and want to hire some of the folks we hire, just recognize that they're coming to the job with all these other challenges in their life and give them some latitude. They may need an extra day off. They may need to take a payday loan from you all earlier and they'll pay you back because they have challenges that the rest of us can never imagine. And they do a good job at their work. They want to do a good job, but sometimes they have stressors outside, whether it's a parole officer demanding something of them or baby mama drama or the landlord shutting off their power. So what am I saying? So if you're a entrepreneur, want to help out, hire the working poor, pay them, what you pay normal, everybody else, right? But just recognize you're going to have to give them a little bit more latitude and they're going to be super loyal employees and long-term, they're going to do a great job.
Yeah, kind of leads in, that does lead into the question I was going to ask about entrepreneurs, small businesses, actually employing people, giving them second chances and being okay with that. Because sometimes you look at a application and, have you been incarcerated or are you a felon or whatever? And then it's marked yes. Some people won't give that person a chance. What do you say about that? Or how can entrepreneurs look at that and say, you know what, let me give this person a chance, or maybe put some things in place where they can give these people a chance?
Yeah. I would say, and I hope this doesn't sound like I'm contradicting myself. Well, first let me say, don't even think about whether they have a felony or not a felony. If you interview them and you think they can do the job and you want them to do the job, give them the job. Let's not judge somebody for the worst thing they've done in their life, right? So it's like, but also know that if you do have that knowledge of him or her background, you could probably going to have to give them some latitude of, like I said, a couple of more days off. The parole officer is going to call in at some point and say, you need to report tomorrow. So oftentimes, most businesses, if you call in a day in advance, you can't get the day off, but parole officer is going to demand that. So you got to have to give them some type of latitude. But don't be fearful of what the felony was or that they've been incarcerated. If they're showing up at your place looking for a job and they want to do a good job. They want to have an honest day's pay for an honest day's work, and give them that chance for sure. Just don't hire them because they're a felon. Hire them because you think they can do the job.
Because they can do the job. Yeah. There's some innovative ways that can be put in place to hire someone who's been incarcerated, if I can talk to that.
Yeah.
Incarcerated. Yeah.
Well, I mean, look, in LA, for sure, the people who've been in our Homeboy program do well. So almost like we have good housekeeping seal of approval. If they get through us and our businesses, then they're ready to work for sure. And so if we ever listen, there's other organizations that do reentry services around the country. If they've kind of spent time going through a reentry program, helping them get through some of their challenges, that's an important part of it. Sure.
Do you do mentorship with anybody who's been incarcerated? Do you have a membership? I can't talk today. A mentorship program.
Well, it's funny how you say everything we do is mentorship.
Mm-hmm.
Over time, I've worked hard. Now, 2/3 of our management team are people who are former clients. So men and women who were in the gangs, men and women who are incarcerated, they come to Homeboy. They get through our 18-month model, our program. We hire them on as regular employees. They rise up to different levels of management. And so everything we do is about mentoring people to realize their strengths, lean into their self-worth, thrive going forward, positive reinforcement, and then help people as they struggle, because people will struggle, but we have to sort of be there with them along the way. So it's a great deal of mentorship along the way.
Which I think it helps. Now, we talked about this a little bit. You've launched several businesses, social enterprise businesses. What's your approach to identifying like a viable business opportunity?
Yeah. So for Homeboy, let me first say why we want to keep launching businesses. So people come to our Homeboy program, for the most part, they've never had a job elsewhere before they show up at Homeboy. So they come out of prison, we help them heal, we help them become resilient to take on what society throws at them. And then we try to get them a job outside of Homeboy. And not that many family-friendly employers. So it's always frustrated me. A lot of our guys end up at minimum wage jobs after Homeboy. And in LA County, it's hard to live on minimum wage. So, and then at the same time, I've seen that our own Homeboy businesses, I see how they've grown, and that every one of the managers within our Homeboy businesses are former clients. So I know our folks can do the job at all levels: frontline supervisor, director, manager, VP, all that. All right. And so part of me then put my business background to use, and especially when I said in the for-profit world, I bought 40 companies and sold 5. I want to create more businesses or acquire more businesses. So I want more businesses so we can create more jobs, and so that more folks can have a chance to make a market-based wage and provide for their families. And so to your question then, what kind of businesses would that be? And it's funny, I'm a little bit agnostic because I need a business that needs physical labor, hands, feet, head, right? I can't be an IT company, right? Yeah, so I can't. So what we need is sort of, whether it's a manufacturing business or food service businesses. So a number of years ago, we acquired an electronic recycling company where, in the state of California, there's all these rules in place about how to recycle electronics, cell phones, computers. And so we acquired that business, which is kind of innovative for a nonprofit acquiring a for-profit business. At the time, they're about $500,000 in revenue each year. We acquired them. Now they do about $3.5 million of revenue, bringing under the Homeboy brand and Homeboy name. And it's been a great job for our folks. They can pull apart computers and reassemble them and resell them. And so that's a business that needs physical labor.
Yeah.
And that also kind of can produce a profit. This past month, we opened up one of our newer businesses, dog grooming. There's not enough dog grooming spots in LA County. And it turns out these are pretty good jobs. We're paying our folks $21 an hour plus tips. They love it. They love grooming dogs. They learn how to cut hair in prison.
Yeah, yeah. And now, LA loves dogs.
LA loves dogs, especially small foo-foo dogs, right? They need
exactly.
Prison, right?
Right.
And so there's that one. And then, we're thinking about an automotive shop along the way. A few more food businesses that we, because we have a homegrown cafe and bakery, we know that. So I'm looking for the dynamic is with labor, it needs physical labor. So I need to employ people. And the other thing is, I hope to find businesses that can contract with the government. We get very little government funds to do what we're doing. We're mostly 90% privately funded between donations and business revenue.
Mm-hmm.
But government was willing to contract with us. And so if I can find a business that a third of the volume will be contracted with the city or the county, I mean, that's what I'm looking for as well.
Now I'm hearing you, and I keep looking at the nonprofit I started, and it keeps popping up in my head because there was someone who was working with me to help build it. She was, and this is everything that you're saying is it makes sense, but it was so foreign to me. And she was like, it was 4 young men and women who didn't, who grew up in homes without fathers. And she said, it's great to have that social thing, but let's get them some jobs. They want to make some money as well, and keep their minds going. And I think that's just such a phenomenal thing that I think that would just be a great thing for nonprofits to really take that on and look at how nonprofits are not just take, but there's a give in that situation as well. And we're building up people to give back to society.
That's right.
In a great way. And I just think it's amazing. And so, what are the misconceptions about running a social enterprise?
Well, let me say missteps.
Missteps, okay.
Again, people aren't clear about what is their mission, succinctly, that they now try to do too many things at once. Number one. Number two, a misstep that I keep advising people to avoid. It's fine to run a nonprofit social enterprise. It's fine to run a for-profit social enterprise, but you have to have management in place who knows how to run it in a for-profit way. I mean, if you can't run it as a for-profit, you're never going to be able to succeed long-term running as a nonprofit.
Right.
You got to have the dynamic of understanding the cadence. It's a cash type business. Understand money in, money out. Cost of goods, all those things that's on a P&L along the way. And the other thing is, and many nonprofits who do social enterprises rely upon their mission to bring customers in. And I kind of had to force our team saying, no, our product needs to be as comparably as good for the price, because we can't rely upon people's charity to give us business, because they'll do it once, but they won't come back a second time.
Right.
You want to kind of sort of build those repeat customers.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other is, and this is a little bit off from your question, but it's like work to build a management team from within, right? And look, that's how you kind of really have diversity in the workplace. It's like take your frontline workers, you groom a few up to be your frontline supervisors, you groom a few more up to be managers, you groom them up along the way, and they will hold the culture strong of what that social enterprise is about. If you're constantly hiring outside people, you're not going to get the right culture in place.
Right. Lose the quality. So I have a research here that you guys started launching Homeboy Threads,
Mm-hmm.
right? What impact does that have on the fashion industry, or has it impacted the fashion industry yet?
Well, we wanted to impact the fashion industry a little more than it has. So listen, so what we're trying to do is fashion brands have come to us and said to us, listen, they got a lot of unsold merchandise in warehouses, and they don't want to necessarily just dump that into landfill.
Mm-hmm.
And so we said, okay, this was an outgrowth of our recycling of electronics. Now we're going to recycle apparel. So we said, okay, bring it to us. We have a labor force. We've got people. We can put them to work to deconstruct some of the fabric or the clothing in different ways, take the labels off, and kind of repurpose that fabric downstream. And that's the kind of the thinking behind that business. It's been slower at growing than we would like.
Mm-hmm.
Brands have sort of given more lip service. Some brands are pretty good at it. Other brands would kind of give lip service to it all because it's too easy for them is to buy cheap and dump the stuff into landfill.
Right.
But yeah, it's going to change. We think the landfills are filling up. You can't just have 10% of that landfill be apparel. You should do something different along the way. So we're a little bit. We may be ahead of the curve here. So we'll see how it plays out. But they've been good jobs for our folks.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know. I'm just at all at all the things that you're doing as a nonprofit with for-profit kind of things, the social enterprise. And I just think it's amazing. What kind of leadership qualities can an entrepreneur take on trying to build a social enterprise?
Yeah. Listen, it sounds almost cliche. It's about empathy and compassion. I mean, I learned this much more now than I did in my for-profit role. In my for-profit role, I thought I had to be, command and control and quickly making decisions, And I learned at Homeboy I can quickly still make decisions, but it's about being more empathetic and listening more and having the team buy into the decision in a much more fuller way. And it's a shift that entrepreneurs need to make because entrepreneurs are generally they're sole practitioners for a while and they got everything at stake in terms of what they're doing. So they're hard for them to give up trust issue or letting go or delegating.
I
But
had that for a while.
I sort of have this thing. I wrote a book called The Homeboy Way, and in it, what I did is I take what lessons that I started writing because what lessons did I learn at Homeboy that I would take back to the for-profit world. And there's a whole bunch of stuff in there. And I talk about my own spiritual journey along the way, but and this I think will line up between the two for entrepreneurs. Like about 4 or 5 years ago, I finally figured out something. Now I'm older in life, but my mantra every day is getting up and seeking joy and looking for joy and experiencing joy. And then all my other worries are secondary to that. And associated with that is you find joy through others. And so if you, as an entrepreneur, as a business person, it's like, okay, I wake up every day. How do I find joy through others? How do we work at this together and see each other, find joy? We're committed. It's a team. We're doing the same kind of thing. But it's about, in the day, you're checking out how much joy did I have? What was it? And it's in a sort of good mental checklist all throughout the week. And because being like I thought about Homeboy, almost like an entrepreneurial issue or a family-run business. It's a stressful thing. It's full throttle. You're trying to make payroll. You're trying to keep things alive. You're trying to move things forward. Very stressful. But when I finally shifted through the help of our founder, Father Greg, it's about seeking joy. And it was like, that really helped quite a bit.
It's phenomenal that you said that because just today, like you said, like in the entrepreneurial world and in this bubble, it can be stressful. And there's a vision that we want to create and a vision or future that we're creating and working for, but it doesn't always work out the way that we see. And this morning, I was like, Mike, are you having fun? Are you still having fun?
Good question.
Yeah, and I had to ask myself, like, am I still having fun? And even when I have moments when I'm not having fun, is there still joy in what I'm building and creating? And I had to ask myself that. And I can be like, you know what? Yes, because I don't see myself doing anything else at this moment. This is what I live for, every aspect of it. And I think that's where I have to continue to use the questions for myself to keep myself alive in what I'm doing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I was going to talk about the Homeboy Way. What are the core principles of the Homeboy Way? I know you talked about, bringing joy, but do you have core principles?
Sure. It's in the corporate world, the business world, you sort of, particularly in the bigger corporation side, you're rule bound, you worry about setting precedent and doing the same thing for everybody. At Homeboy, we have a freedom. We help the individual in front of us in the way they need. May not be the same tomorrow. So you may come to me today and then you need help, you need money for rent. Because, we know your story. We know you've been trying, but you come up short, right? We'll give you the money. Tomorrow, another guy may come and we won't give him the money because we know his story. We know something else. We know another situation. So we're not worried about setting precedent, right? And so that's pretty freeing, not worrying about setting precedent. And so it's about the individual, not about the whole thing. And it's the other thing is about doing what's needed for that to help that person today. And I really mean today. In the corporate world, business world, I did this all the time. You would be in the office and you'd be walking down the hall, you see a colleague, you sit and have a chit chat. And as you're talking, you still got 9 things rolling through your brain as to what else you need to work on, right? Or someone may bring a problem to you and you realize, okay, that's probably number 4 on my priority list and you'll get to it, right? But at Homeboy, when someone needs help, you help them today. You don't put it off. You can't do that all the time. I get it. I know I'm sounding like I'm making this perfect world here, but it's like it's a philosophy of how you go about life, how you go about running your business. That permeates everything, and that makes a difference. So it's about helping the individual, working on it today, and leading in with investment. Poor in our society need help. Poverty rate in America has been the same for 45 years, same narrow 12% band. And I think what's pretty amazing at Homeboy is we're helping people who are very poor and incarcerated lift them out of poverty by helping them get a job outside of Homeboy. So if Homeboy can lift people out of poverty, I think the corporate world can do that. And so to me, it's about hiring the poor and understanding the challenges they have and providing some support services around it.
I agree. In that, there's some compassion. So how does an entrepreneur with compassion drive long-term business success?
Yeah, well, they're not, I like how you answered the question, but one doesn't stop the other. One does not stop the other. Whatever your product, if you're making a product, you got to make the product. If you're doing a service, you got to do the service. You can still be compassionate with your people. I'm not saying not hold them accountable to do X, Y, and Z. But you have compassion how you talk about it. If someone's falling short, you can still have compassion how you talk to them about why they're falling short. They're falling short because something else is happening in their life, or maybe they didn't understand X, Y, and Z. Very few people, I think, sort of don't do a good job because, let me say it in a different way. Most people do a good job, and if they're not doing a good job, they have stressors in their life. And maybe you have the wrong person in the wrong job also, but you can still bring compassion to every one of those conversations.
And these are okay, so a lot of businesses, I mean, everything is like a transaction relationship.
Sure, I know. That's the whole key. Don't be transactional.
Right. And so how do you
Relational.
shift that? Yeah. How do you do it in a transformational kind of way and make a transformational impact in your business?
Well, listen, so we have sort of a number of years ago, I sort of had some outside, we got a lot of volunteers to help us, and some business academic guys came along. And so we sort of framed it this way, that at Homeboy, which is different from the rest of the world, we have sort of relational accountability as opposed to consequential accountability.
Okay.
You don't do X, Y, Z, you get this. For us, it's about building relationship with our workforce. And because we're in that relationship, they will do what you're asking for them to do, as opposed to saying, if you don't get X, Y, and Z done.
Right. Right.
It's a mindset shift. Now we don't have traditional corporate review process where we measure people from 1 to 5 on a different scale.
Yeah.
We don't believe in measuring people along the way.
That makes sense. I mean, I love Homeboy. I haven't even
Good.
been in the building, but just the way
It's got a
that,
great energy.
yeah, I can sense it. I mean, like I'm still having like these visions of me driving
Yeah, well,
past the building.
come drive back to us.
Yeah, when I come to LA, I'll come to visit for
Oh,
sure because everything that you guys are standing for is it's transformational in many ways, and it supports people to do level up in their lives, and I think that's phenomenal. And so I have a question here. So if every business adopted one principle from Homeboy Industries, which would have the biggest impact on society?
geez, only one.
Well, you can name as many
Its
as you
impact. I mean, tangibly, I want to say hire the working poor. That will have a massive impact on society. To have less poor people in our society will have a massive impact. But the other one, I guess I want to be more aspirational, recognizing that there aren't good people and bad people in our society. There's goodness in everybody. And like I learned, we all learned this, but I saw this Homeboy from day one through the teachings of Father Greg and the other homies, that God is too busy loving us to be judging us. So we don't need to judge. We just don't need to judge. And that will have a big impact on society as well.
Yeah, I think judging, it comes as being human, but I think, not doing it, it takes work,
It
right?
takes work. Totally takes work.
And it could make the world, I mean, and we're talking about entrepreneurship and business and, social enterprise, but just being a little bit more compassionate, just being more understanding, just seeing, the help that's needed, especially as an entrepreneur, reaching out can make a difference, not in only your world, but the other worlds that you end up touching.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So what's one piece of advice that you can give to an entrepreneur, aspiring entrepreneur right now that's looking to build their business, create the business, not just as, like I said, transactional, but something that's purposeful and intentional that can make an impact in the world?
Bring people along with you. People want to follow leaders. They want to be part of it. You don't need to put a big distance between you and everybody else.
And as your last words here on the podcast, what story, advice, or anything that you would like to say that's on your heart?
Yeah, if you allow me to do it this way. Look, I feel like my last 12 years at Homeboy has been full of God's graces and seeing people change their life because they found that they can start loving others, because they start loving themselves, and they start loving themselves because they finally understand that God loves them no matter what. And it goes along with understanding not to judge. Once you understand God loves you no matter what, and that you're made in God's eyes, everything else gets much easier. And it's very much full of joy.
And I sense that from you. So I appreciate you, Tom, for being here. Now, I know that, you're in Los Angeles, but how do people support or get in touch with you or even buy your book?
Yeah, great. Book is on Amazon, The Homeboy Way. Come to Los Angeles for sure. We have a web presence at Homeboy, a lot of content on our Facebook page. We have so many of our folks talk about their stories and in their voice, in their authentic voice. And, there's a lot of stuff out there about us. So come read it. Father Greg has 4 books as well, beautifully written books. And, there's a lot to be said.
Nice. Thank you. I mean, the impact that you guys are doing, like I said it before, but it's amazing. It's astounding. And If there's other people who are watching that are looking to, start a nonprofit, it's a good way. Hey, they have,
A lot in there.
they have a method here.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah. So for all the listeners and watchers, you know what to do. Go to Facebook, go to the Thrivewell Journey if you want to see clips and other information. And as we always say, make thriving your new normal. Tom, thank you again. I
Thank you
appreciate
very
you.
much.